Hello everyone, hope you're doing well. We're continuing our series of suggestions passed to developers, and we are having a look at August 2025 again and some of the ground vehicles. Just to let you know, there are Twitch drops going on right now, and we will be streaming, so all you have to do is follow the links in the description and come along and get yourself some free stuff, including a Panzer III J1 TD, which is quite fun. So as always, if you enjoy the content, make sure to subscribe and like the video. Let's get started. The first vehicle we have is the WMA301, which we already have in game. This is actually an additional armor package for it, which probably isn't going to help it too much, but why not? With the collapse of the USSR in the early 1990s, China's focus could finally switch from heavily guarding its northern border to other matters. One of these matters was the development of lighter, faster, and easier to maintain military vehicles. This need would lead to Norinco developing a new multi-role wheeled platform, which would be designated the WZ551. In its basic form, this new vehicle would be an APC. However, as it was designed to be multi-role, ways to expand its capabilities were being developed alongside the vehicle itself. One of these developments would be called the PTL-87, a variant equipped with a 100mm cannon, which would be improved upon and enter Chinese service in 2002 as the PTL-02. As with the majority of their products, Norinco was immediately looking to release their new domestically successful vehicle to the export market. However, very few countries were still using the outdated 100mm caliber, and had long since switched over to the NATO standard 105mm caliber, as it was not only more powerful, but also much more available. As such, it was eventually decided to modify the PTL-02 to house a NATO standard 105mm cannon, which would be fitted in a newly designed turret. The new vehicle would debut on the export market as the WMA301 and would find a lot of quick success. It's currently in service with Cameroon, Chad, Djibouti, Myanmar, and also Senegal. In many respects, the WMA301 was a fantastic wheeled tank destroyer, especially for poorer countries. It's relatively cheap, has a powerful cannon, and also is logistically easy to supply, and can get from point A to point B pretty quickly. All that being said, the WMA301 has a pretty big glaring weakness. Its armor was only 10mm at the front and 8mm at the side. It may as well have been made of soggy tissues. This poor armor profile made the vehicle very vulnerable to close-range heavy machine gun fire, and near useless when faced with any sort of autocannon. This weakness eventually led to Norinco creating an upgrade package for the WMA301 in 2017, which covered the vehicle's front and sides with additional armor plates at least 10mm thick. So in addition to the armor plates, the vehicle's headlight system would also be reworked, with the pre-existing headlights being enclosed in a more robust protective set of cages, and also 2 new headlights being added to the lower glacis. As of yet, it doesn't seem to have appeared anywhere apart from this demonstration setup. For Italy, we have another Otto Melara vehicle. This is the Otto Melara Leone, which is lion in English. This was a joint cooperation between Italy's Otto Melara and the German company known as Krauss Maffei. There were several other German and Italian companies also involved, who all agreed on trying to create an export tank mainly for Middle Eastern countries to acquire, while the main production lines of Italian and German Leopard tanks were underway. The project mainly started due to issues regarding law in Germany about the exportation of specific vehicles. So in efforts to continue the loophole, 50% of the tanks would be made in Germany, while the final 50% would be finished and assembled in Italy, inside the Otto Melara factory in La Spezia. The official project started in 1975 and would be revealed in 1976 to the public. The main role was to allow third world countries and also other Middle Eastern countries the ability to effectively buy a cost-efficient Leopard tank. Due to this, many technical components of the tank had to be fitted to make sure it would work well in its intended environment, so it would be outfitted with greater ventilation, cooling, and also filtration systems so it could operate in much harsher and also warmer climates. This was done due to the main possible export market being the Middle East, So everything had to be made in such a way to allow the users of the product to not be dissatisfied with their new vehicles. The shares of the vehicle would be 50-50 split between Italy and Germany, as at the end of the day, both countries were equally involved in the project. The hull, engine, transmission, and also running gear were made in Germany, and the turret, armament, and electrical equipment would be made in Italy. Also, as previously mentioned, the tank would be finally assembled in Italy. The sole and only known prototype of the vehicle would be completed in 1977, with the sole interest of the vehicle being Pakistan, although, as everyone knows, nothing came out of that. There would be a crew of 4 in total. A lot of the logistics would be similar to that of the Leopard 1. In terms of armament, it had access to an Italian-made Otto Melara 105mm stabilized rifled cannon, which would more than likely be able to fire heat, APDS, and also HESH rounds, just like the later product of the Lion, which was the OF-40. The coaxial and roof-mounted machine guns would be represented in the form of MG3s, but if a buyer had a specific need for a different type of weapon to be put there instead, it could definitely be changed. The armor and survivability were very similar to the Leopard 1. In fact, the whole vehicle used to be called the Leopardino, or in Italian, the Small Leopard, due to how similar they were in all things considered. Ammo is stored in the front of the vehicle, again similar to the Leopard series of tanks, and it also had access to 8 smoke grenades in case there was need to disengage for potential targets. 4 would be mounted on each side of the vehicle's turret. Lastly but not least, it also had access to night vision devices for any and all nocturnal usage of the vehicle. At the end of the day, with one prototype being complete and basically no interest around the world, Germany most likely pulled out and Italy wasn't able to export the vehicle due to some contract licensing issues. This would be, however, used as the basis of what we now know as the OF-40, a fully Italian project that aimed to do the same things the Lion couldn't do. For France, we have the AMX-30 DFC, which is a fun little stealth tank. Basically, the DFC is a technology demonstrator based on the AMX-30B2, incorporating stealth technology. The tank was covered in a radar-absorbing material over the normal steel, and also cold air was pumped between the armor, and this was designed to reduce the vehicle's IR signature. In this fashion, there was only a few parts that would still be visible in the thermal imager. This allowed the tank to basically be quick and wander around the place and not have as high of a thermal signature as other ones. Also, at the same time, the areas which would be the most visible compared to the rest of it would be the engine deck, the tracks, and also the barrels, but everything else should basically be quite low. The tank obviously itself is not physically invisible. This was more designed around the idea of trying to lower its radar signature and also lower its general thermal setup. The AMX-30 DFC was tested in 1990, and at the time the EPC program was reaching its end, and the Leclerc MBT was almost ready to be produced and replace the fleet of aging AMX-30s. Knowing the AMX-30B2 had basically been obsolete for a while, France had tested and developed serial potential upgrades to modernize the army. The Leclerc would take years to completely replace AMX-30, but there was still a possibility to keep them in service as a second-line tank, such as the reserve or potentially for maybe special units. The AMX-30C2 was created in this occasion, as well as the AMX-30 DFC. Only the political situation drastically changed with the collapse of the USSR, making the need for costly advanced upgrades a bit of a waste of money. The AMX-30 DFC was then unfortunately abandoned soon after it was revealed. The vehicle has access to the 105mm CN105F1. This is the main gun that's used on the AMX-30 series of basic vehicles. It also, at the same time, kept its coaxial 20mm, which is quite nice, and it has the same problem as all of the other AMX-30s, basically, where it does not have access to a stabilizer. Another part of it, which is basically the same, is it had the 680 horsepower engine, meaning that it had a pretty good power to weight of 17.89 horsepower per ton. Even though the vehicle was a little bit heavier, this didn't actually affect its top speed. It just meant that its acceleration was a little bit slower. Now, the protection is also basically identical beneath the radar absorption layer of the AMX-30B2. This means the protection would remain similar against kinetic projectiles, and the layer of radar-absorbing material doesn't really offer a lot of protection. The key to this survivability is in fact the tank being almost invisible to thermal and radar systems. The material has been radar absorbing, there's not much chance for radar to see it, and with the cold air there continuously pumped into the space between the layer of armor, the tank would not really be visible for thermals either. This meant that the only way to spot it would be line of sight or optical view, and physically the tank wouldn't be obviously invisible. A player with the capability of spotting it without thermals, just like any other tank, and the crew is identical to the AMX-30, the tank keeps 4 grenade launchers on the front of the turret to provide smoke cover too. So the vehicle would be very similar to the AMX-30, it would just look cool. And sometimes that's what you need in War Thunder, a little bit of drip. As always, I hope you have a wonderful day, and I'll see you next time.
I'd just like to thank GMG Smiley, CD Beans, Chieftain Mike, EMN3 Galaxy, Tulio Pontecorvo, Brendan Quinn, Carrion Crow, Gus Irenicus, Pyman, Wartinder, Teddy, Daniel Stanton, Martinez, B. Young, Ozzy Panzer, Alan Hacker, Liam Shear, Opium Prime, Lafouche, Sem, Aslan, Uncle Bean, and Derek R. for supporting the channel.